And so ultimately what I have to say is that as a human rights activist, as a director of a human rights organization, I also understand the limits of human rights. And what I often say to Palestinians is, I cannot tell you to give up your right of return. That's only Palestinians can talk about that. I have no right to do that. I can only interpret for you that you have a tough choice to make, because as long as you insist in the immediate future for full right of return, there is no possibility of peace, because it's a non-starter, as I said, in Israel. And therefore, you need to decide whether to forego this right, which is an absolute right, which I can't tell you to forego, and thereby accept that there will not be peace in the near future, or say that for now we compromise that right for the sake of peace, which is in our interest. A tough, terrible dilemma, which only the Palestinian people can make, just as only the Jewish people can talk about limiting our self-determination in any ways and this kind of thing. But that is a dilemma, and so in that sense, both for Israelis and for Palestinians, I think we can create a world and a Middle East in which many more of our rights can be actualized and ought to be actualized and are being actualized today. We can aspire to a future in which we can have full actualization of our legitimate human rights, both as Jews and as Palestinians. But in the near future, because of this conflict between right and right, we all have tough choices to make. And as I said, even as a human rights activist, I acknowledge that there's a certain point where there is an inevitable conflict not only between Zionism and human rights, but also between Palestinian nationalism and human rights. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Why don't you just acknowledge questions, and if you would identify yourselves and if you're affiliated, please say so.
All right. This was the first hand I saw up. Go for it.
Hi. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very thought-provoking. My name is Steve Hayes. Seems to be one way to both codify human rights in Israel and also to build some consensus around what Zionism does or does not mean would be to produce a constitution. Could you talk a little bit about whether that might happen in our lifetime?
That's a good question. In our Declaration of Independence, which in lieu of a constitution has taken on a semi-constitutional role in Israeli jurisprudence, it's actually used in court decisions and this kind of thing. It says that within, I forget how many months, the signing of this document, there will be a constitution. That was back in 1948. We are much beyond that, and we still don't have a constitution. There is a movement within Israel the last maybe 10, 15 years in particular to push for a constitution. The challenge is we are such a diverse society. Back in the 50s, the opposition largely came particularly from religious groups who were then a clear quite clearly the minority, and they were afraid that a constitution would trample certain values that they had as religious Jews. Today, there are many people on the left who want a constitution, but not now, because they're afraid of what it would look like if we were to draft a constitution today. So while I think everybody may agree that other than some people in the religious community who still say the only constitution is the Torah and therefore there should be no other constitution, I think most Israelis probably would agree that it would be good to have a constitution, but when you start trying to dig a little bit deeper in terms of what it might look like, you'd have very different kinds of perceptions of what it might be. Yes. Yes.
Would you be willing to speculate on why you think your roommate, the Zionist Harvard undergrad, ended up in Los Angeles, and you, the non-Zionist, ended up in Israel?
I think it was trying to make a living, basically. Like, I mean, he did live in Israel for a while, and it was just, and he's married to an Israeli, in fact, but it just financial realities sent him off to Los Angeles. Okay. See a hand? Okay. Did you have your hand up before? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go.
Hi, my name is Kay Plitt. I work with FOTANA, Friends of Ten Nations, North America. On the right of return, do you think that if the countries that now have Palestinian refugee camps, Jordan, if they brought those individuals into full citizenship in their own countries, they became Palestinian Jordanians, Palestinian whatever, that would solve some of the issue with so many people wanting to come back to Palestine to live if that right of return was given to them?
Obviously, that would be very helpful. Obviously, if there would be a Palestinian state with right of return into the Palestinian state, which most Israelis would readily agree to, there would not be a problem. But the issue is, of course, that many people, and understandably, are. It wouldn't be enough just if they're from Jaffa to go live in Ramallah, because Ramallah is also part of Palestine. They want to go back to their lands, the places where they lived, and those, only those people themselves can answer those tough questions about is some form of reconciliation and peace something that justifies making those compromises. I can't tell them to give up on their rights any more than I will accept that someone tells me that I have to give up on my rights. Okay, over here, yes.
My name is John Cattell. I'm a Quaker.
Okay.
And I've been doing a lot of work on this problem. And it's my impression that President Obama has indicated that he wants to try to be some sort of a peacemaker in this whole thing. Normally, if you're trying to arrange some kind of a peace between two factions, there has to be somebody representing each of the two factions. Right now, it's my impression that the Palestinians are so disorganized that they don't have anybody to represent them. In general, I'd welcome any ideas you have about how we can get some kind of a peace out of this horrible situation.
I think you're right that is an issue of who speaks for Palestinians is a serious issue. I think most Palestinians looking around in despair think that they've got only bad choices. I think today, if after the Hamas takeover of Gaza, there were many Palestinians and Gazans that were pleased that it was safer for